Welcome to The Explainer. Look, I am so incredibly excited you're here today because we are going to unpack a complete paradigm shift about how true wealth is actually built. Most of us, we grew up with a very specific script about money. We were told to go to school, get a good job, earn a high salary, and eventually, if we just grind away long enough, we'll somehow become wealthy. But when we actually look at the data, that script just doesn't hold up. Today, we're going to completely dismantle the myth that your salary equals your wealth, and we're going to use some incredibly simple concepts to do it. So, grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's fundamentally change how we look at money.
Right out of the gate, here's a bit of a gut punch for you. If working hard makes you rich, why aren't the hardest workers the wealthiest? Seriously, think about the folks doing grueling manual labor, working double shifts or burning the midnight oil 7 days a week. They are working incredibly hard, literally sweating for every dollar, yet they often aren't the ones accumulating massive wealth. While a good income for sure helps, wealthy people understand that a salary alone rarely creates lasting wealth. There is a missing piece to this puzzle. It's a totally different architecture at play. And that is exactly what we're going to construct today. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the time for money trap, which is all about the hidden ceiling on your daily paycheck. To really visualize the trap of the standard paycheck, let's look at a classic comparison. We've got the bucket carrier on one side and the pipeline builder on the other. Imagine you live in a village about a mile away from a river. To make a living, you grab a bucket, walk to the river, fill it up, walk back, and sell the water. That is a salary. You trade your time and your physical effort for money. But on side B, we have the pipeline builder. Now, this person might carry a bucket for a little while just to survive, but their real focus? They spend their evenings and weekends connecting pipes from the river directly to the village. They aren't just doing a job, they are building a system.
Let's unpack the fatal flaw of simply being a bucket carrier. The biggest limitation of a salary is that it depends entirely on your time and your effort. It requires your continuous physical presence and mental energy. And here's the scariest part. If you get sick, if you want to take a month off, or if you just simply stop working, well, the paycheck stops completely. The water literally stops flowing. Having a high salary just means you have a bigger bucket, but guess what? You still have to carry it every single day. There's a hard, physical, mathematical limit to how many buckets you can possibly carry in a 24-hour period.
So how do we break out of that? That brings us to Section 2, building your income pipeline. This is the big transition from wage earner to system owner.
To understand this, we need to know what the pipeline is actually made of. And that means defining what an asset is. Simply put, an asset is an income source, or a system that produces cash flow over time without requiring your continuous, active labor. Wealthy individuals don't spend their lives trying to carry heavier and heavier buckets. No, they focus almost entirely on building and acquiring assets. They want income sources that continue generating money even when they're sleeping, when they're on vacation, or when they're just hanging out with their kids.
This leads us to an absolutely crucial difference in financial stability. Relying on a single paycheck from one employer is kind of like trying to balance on a pogo stick. It takes constant effort, you have to stay perfectly upright, and if you hit just one tiny bump, like a company layoff or a sudden illness, you fall over completely. It's inherently unstable. But the wealthy, they build a sturdy table. By creating multiple streams of income through various assets, they create unparalleled financial stability. If one leg of that table gets a little wobbly, the table itself still stands perfectly strong.
So what do those table legs actually look like in the real world? Well, leg 1 could be your investments in stocks. These generate cash flow through dividends and the overall growth of your portfolio over time. Leg 2 might be real estate, where you own property and your pipeline flows through that monthly rental income. Leg 3 could be ownership. This means owning a business that makes profits or holding the rights to a book, software, or music that pays you royalties. Notice what all of these have in common. Once the system is built or bought, the cash flow continues regardless of how many hours you actually clocked in that day.
Let's move right into Section 3. The power of growing assets, and exactly why wealth outpaces wages.
Just look at the immense contrast in growth potential here. We already established that a salary provides cash, but it's a fixed bar. It is completely capped by your time. You can really only negotiate your hourly rate or your annual salary so high. But assets, they have this incredible secret superpower. They can appreciate in value. A successful business, a real estate investment, or a solid stock portfolio doesn't just pay you a little bit of cash today. It can grow significantly over the years. The value of the asset itself expands, creating wealth way beyond what a typical 3% annual salary increase could ever provide. Your pipeline actually gets wider all by itself over time.
Okay, Section 4, planting seeds for the future. We're getting into the secret mechanics of reinvestment now. So how do the wealthy treat the money their pipelines produce? Let's use another quick analogy. Imagine you stumble upon a wild apple tree. Now, a typical wager earner mindset, let's call it side A, finds the tree, picks the apples, and just eats them all. In the financial world, we call this lifestyle inflation. You get a raise or your asset pays you out, and you immediately buy a nicer car, a bigger TV, or go out for expensive dinners. You eat all the apples. But the wealthy mindset on side B is completely different. They eat just enough to survive, and then they take the seeds from those apples and plant them in the ground. They take a large portion of their earnings and reinvest them right back into buying more assets.
And why do they do this? Because reinvestment is what generates exponentially more income in the future. By planting those seeds, they aren't just relying on one lucky wild apple tree anymore. No, they are actively growing an entire orchard. Their money goes to work for them, basically hiring dollar employees to go out and build even more pipelines. This cycle of reinvestment is the invisible engine that turns a modest middle-class income into massive, lasting generational wealth.
All right, let's tie it all together in Section 5, the ultimate wealth machine. This is your actual blueprint for financial independence. Let's see how all these concepts we've talked about build into a practical, actionable blueprint. Step 1, earn a salary. Look, there's absolutely no shame in carrying the bucket at first. In fact, it's pretty much necessary. You need that initial cash. But step 2 is where the magic shift happens. You use the water from your bucket to buy and build assets. You start laying your pipeline and planting your seeds. Step 3, when those assets start producing a little bit of income, don't just increase your lifestyle. Reinvest the earnings, grow the orchard. And finally, step 4, let the systems run. Once your assets are large enough, the pipeline just flows automatically.
Now, I want to make something absolutely crystal clear regarding this whole strategy. The goal isn't necessarily to just stop working entirely and sit on a beach forever. Though, hey, you certainly could if you wanted to. The real goal is freedom. The goal is to reach a point where your income comes from multiple, reliable sources, instead of just begging a single employer for a paycheck. It's about taking your power back. It's about shifting from the vulnerability of earning wages to the unshakable stability of owning assets. There's a quote from the source material that just perfectly encapsulates everything we've talked about today. It says, "True wealth is often built not by working harder, but by creating systems that continue producing income long after the work is done." Seriously, let that sink in for a second. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter by designing systems. The work is done once, but the reward is collected continuously. That right there is the true architecture of lasting wealth.
So I want to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. Look at your own life right now, your own daily grind, and ask yourself this. When you wake up tomorrow morning, are you just going to put your head down and carry buckets for another straight decade? Or are you going to use your evenings, your weekends, and your spare cash to lay the very first pipe of your own wealth system? The choice between the bucket and the pipeline is entirely yours, so start planting those seeds today. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this concept, and I really hope it completely changes the way you look at your next paycheck.